Good morning, everybody. We like it balls, right? Welcome, everybody. We hope this presentation actually inspires you as it did us over the last few years. And it's basically just a good story to sell, to share, not really to sell. Myself, I'll be taking you through the why. Tammy, the impact this has had, even greater than we could imagine, and Thato, the way forward. So solving for a problem, in the way that we deal with things at Barloworld is that we want to inspire a world of difference, not necessarily just make a difference. What we mean by this is essentially, one of our customers came to us and said they don't want to put any waste into landfill. So we could have put it into incineration, but that's not inspiring. And this is essentially where our story starts. We hope that after this presentation, we've inspired some of you to think differently and to collaborate as well. So that's a big takeaway we want you to have today. So yeah, back in 2018, this is what our DC looked like. We were doing recycling, but only on items that we were getting rebates for, like most of the guys do. But we're still putting one skip a week into the landfill and 2 12-meter containers in per annum. This is not sustainable, and this is only one warehouse. What's the impact of 5, 10, 20, or 30 warehouses? So it's a bigger problem we had to solve for. So we started our process essentially the easy way. The team basically sorted at source. We gave it to the recycling vendor, and they were able to recycle, but we had a big problem. As a warehouse, the guys working in warehousing knows that you've got a lot of backing labels that you keep printing, and there is no sustainable solution for this. You can either incinerate, but you can't recycle it. The other one was actually the footwear, apparel, and equipment that we had to destroy. And this you see in most of your retailers. It is a big issue that nobody could give us a solution for. That being said, if you lead to the state of fashion, circularity is an issue, and it has to be addressed. It's in every single report since, I believe it was 2019. So we had to think differently. How do we solve for this? So we wanted to have 0% impact on the environment, and we wanted the initiative to be inclusive, impactful, and innovative. With that, we had to ask ourselves these questions. How can we be responsible managing waste to contribute to a broader workforce? Can a particular form of waste have a positive impact in South Africa's social and economic problems we have? And how can we convert waste into an actual resource? We then went out to market, and we found a beautiful team of Close to Good that inspired us way more than we actually thought they would. The impact was broader, and the partnership was built over the last 3 years. With that being said, I'm handing over to Tammy to take us through the actual impact.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dewald. So some of you might wonder what an occupational therapist working mostly with vulnerable children and people with disabilities would be doing at the SAPICS conference. But this will come apparent just a little bit later. May I take a couple of seconds to thank the Barloworld family for bringing Close to Good here to talk about something that's really, really close to our hearts, and this is how to look at waste as a resource. Before we do that, I want to touch a little bit on some social challenges we are facing in South Africa. Some of these you might know, and some of these you might not. The South African children is in a crisis in South Africa, and I'm going to say that again. It is a crisis. There's a lack of quality education for children ages 0 to 6 in our low-resourced communities. If we know that 75% of brain development happens in the first 1,000 days of a child's life, we know that many of our children have no stimulation in those years. 25% of our brain development happens later. The problem is that there is very few resources in these low-resource ECD centers. So even though teachers in these ECD centers would like to include children with disabilities or would like to better the lives of these children, they just don't have these resources. Secondly, there's exclusion of children with disabilities in our country. There's been a 500% increase in autism in the last 10 years. I'll say that again, 500%. That means we are a world in crisis because there's not less children with disabilities, but more children with disabilities. I'm going to go back to the lack of quality education, just to tell you that there's a report called the PIRLS report, and it measures children's literacy development all over the world. In 2016, South Africa came out last. Children in grade 4 in public schools, 78% of them could not read with meaning. There's also a 55% dropout rate before grade 12, meaning that every child starting in grade 1, 55% of them will not reach grade 12. So should I say again that it is a crisis? In terms of the exclusion of children with disabilities, we know that it's really because of lack of resources that they are not included. Also, because they're not included, we have mothers of children with disabilities being stuck at home. They cannot go out and find employment because there are no schools, very few ECD centers that will take their children. Not because they don't want to, but because if you have a child with cerebral palsy at the age of 3 and they cannot sit up straight, it means that that child will either be strapped on somebody's back or they will be lying on the floor and they would not participate anyway. And even if these mothers do find schools, 99% of young adults with disabilities will be sitting at home after spending hundreds of thousands of rands on therapy, transport to school. 99% of people with disabilities, especially those with autism and intellectual disabilities, do not have formal employment in South Africa. Although today is not about close to good, I thought I'll just put our mission on the screen, because what this collaboration with Barloworld did, it's really making a difference on all 3 of those levels. Because we have waste as a resource, we are able to alleviate poverty. Because we are able to use these resources to create employment opportunities for people who are lower skilled and people with disabilities. We are able to create more inclusive environments for children with disabilities because we can use these resources, waste resources, to make other resources to include them into these environments. And we are able to create or to care for the environment because we're diverting lots and lots of tons of waste from landfill. To touch on Dewald's 3 I's, when we look at waste, we always keep these 3 I's in mind. We ask, how can we use this particular form of waste to empower more people? How can we enable them through more inclusive environments? How can we create multi-level impact through things that other people will be throwing away? And that is when it becomes really fun, because we look for people, we put up our innovation caps, and we find people like Barloworld who says, we really want to make this difference. We really do not want to put this in landfill. But it's not about waste is a problem. How can we make the world a better place? How can we inspire through waste? Okay, so this is what it looks like in real life. If you look at this shoe, do you think what can it become if you're in logistics, or do you see it as a problem if it has to be destroyed? Anybody thinking about this as a resource? Who sees it as a problem? Oh, thank heavens, there's some of you that sees it as a problem. Okay, so in our team, we have a group of people with disabilities that would take this shoe, they would delace them, and we'd make all kinds of toys from them, if I can find it. So this is threading, a threading exercise where we teach children shapes. We have another team of people with disabilities who will cut this shoe in 3 layers: the sole, the inner sole, and the upper sole. None of this goes to landfill because the sole is being shredded and mixed with cement to make paving blocks. The inner sole is used to cut all kinds of shapes for early childhood development, and the upper is shredded, and all our shredding goes into bean bags like this. These are all made from recycled denim and filled with shoe waste. Okay. In terms of inclusivity, what does it look like? We have people with lower skills and people with disabilities who would delace, cut boxes, and they would also make toys like this. So this shoebox will be flattened and it will become an ABC footprint set. Okay, so nothing goes to waste. When we look at this, we have to think about, can we use this better? It's not a problem, it is a resource. We're also very passionate about skills development and employment opportunities for people with disabilities. We have to ask the question, how can we create multi-level impact through waste? How can we impact children with disabilities, vulnerable children in disadvantaged communities? How can we impact families of children with disabilities, early childhood development teachers through resources, adults with disabilities through employment and the environment? And I'm very sure that you have waste. If you look at all the people that you can empower on that list, we will find somebody. So let's talk about the impact in numbers. And I put up this slide because it's so important for us to think about, yes, we are making bean bags, we are making disability-specific resources, but does it really make a difference? So in the last year or so, we trained 296 teachers to use waste as a resource. We have an early childhood development box with 50 activities, and in that box, we'll use a lot of shoe waste to fill bean bags. We have filled 2,960 bean bags in the last couple of years, and this has all been done by people with disabilities. And that impacted 7,700 children in Diepsloot alone. In terms of disability-specific resources, we know that an activity center like this, you can only order from overseas. So we have a group of mothers who makes those activity centers so that a child with disability can sit in a preschool and he's seating, all those seating arrangements at the back is filled with shoe waste. And we love that because it's a sturdy material. So the question is, if 148 centers each had a seating option for a child with a disability, what would that mean? It would mean that 148 children would have a better chance because they would have education in an ECD center. It would also mean that 148 mothers or family members could potentially find employment. Think about that for a moment. And that because we have waste, that because we are collaborating, that because we are not alone in thinking about how can we inspire. In terms of employment or work-related activities for people with disabilities, in Close to Good alone, we have 15 people with disabilities doing all kinds of activities, and we empower them, and they earn a salary, and they're learning new skills. Think about what that could look like for you. If you could find that nonprofit organization, that social enterprise, if you could look at waste differently and think, can this empower someone? Can this have multi-level impact? Can this create a more enabling environment? How many tons of this can be diverted from landfill? And this leaves me with a couple of things that I want you to think about. It's so easy to say, yes, South Africa has so many problems. We have so many social problems. But how can you be part of that solution? When do we get to the point when we don't sit around the table and say, sure, waste is such a problem? When do we say, waste is such a resource. How do we bridge the gap between waste and resource? Will you think about that after today? Every time you see those pile of boxes, what can this become? If I look at a box, if I look at shoe waste, if you look at that chair that's been made of cardboard box and backing paper, flour and water, is that something that's possible for you? Who would it impact? So many people that we can impact. And what does it mean for the environment? And again, Barloworld, thank you for being those people behind us that inspire the world and making the difference for children with disabilities and their families. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Thanks, Tammy. I think the question is, what does this all mean for supply chain? And before we move on, I just want to take a step back and recognize and appreciate that we've come a long way. Traditional supply chains and how they were set up were typically about maximizing shareholder value and centered around the customer. So more from a process, from a people, from a technology point of view, the focus was always customer and delivering value. So our processes, we've seen globalization, we've seen how businesses started to scale and drew efficiencies from a people point of view, how specialization has came into the forth and delivered productivity and technology. We saw the different industrial revolutions delivering value for the customer. But we cannot ignore what that did to call it from an environment point of view and social. With the excessive waste that we've generated, pollution from a social point of view, rapid urbanization, the health conditions of people, exploitation, and typically a lot of people were excluded in these designs. And fast forward, technology coming into the play with our networks, our hardware, softwares, and applications, again, tailored to maximize on customer centricity. And you hear these words over and over again from an experience point of view, customer success, satisfaction, and profitability. How we've aligned that technology through all the different pieces from a TMS point of view, WMS point of view, and various components to deliver maximum value for customers. However, we know that has increased efficiencies from a customer, reduced costs. There's better quality, improved service. I mean, there's lots of technologies that focus on the customer and improving communication. There's chatbots, AI, and all the works. However, again, with the technology evolving over time and systems becoming more and more integrated, there's new services, e-commerce, delivery at homes. We understand that there's an increase in unsustainable packaging, and you look at how that's impacting the landfill. So you look at the supply chain design in itself, how we've increased from a transport emissions. We see smaller order sizes. We're seeing multiple drops to the customer, so that's inefficient in itself. Higher returns processing. I was in another session where they spoke about a 25% return on the e-commerce leg. So that's extremely wasteful. Now, we need to think about tech and integration beyond the customer. And again, take a stakeholder view. And by that, I mean, we look at what does it do to the community, what does it mean for our environment, and how can technology actually help us to integrate better and do more from a social and an environment point of view. So how do we leverage technology to give us better visibility within our supply chain to understand where the low resource communities are, where early childhood development centers are, and have they been vetted, and how can we better access them? And from an environmental point of view, having to understand the overall, call it impact, and technology gives us the platform to actually do that, mine all this information that we can use to make better decisions. And as part of our journey from moving from that linear to a more circular economy, we gotta integrate way more than just the hardcore logistics components like warehousing and transport, and start to think about how do we draw in the SMMEs like Close to Good, and draw in some of the beneficiaries in the communities where they actually need some of these resources. Now, moving forward, we are proposing that we have to think about it from a platform point of view, and building an integrated platform that actually supports the circular economy. By that I mean, we got to think about these 4 pillars. The first one is a marketplace for recycled products. So we have to have a marketplace where products like this can actually find the demand side. So it's all good and well to have it in a smaller scale with us working with it Close to Good, but a platform has to be created where multiple SMMEs who actually have the skills to create products like this from waste can actually upload these products and make it available on an online platform. And technology allows us to actually do that. And how do people with the resources, how can they actually participate and actually buy some of these products and actually donate to the people that actually need them? The second pillar is a strong supply chain network. So the reverse logistics is always a problem. It's inefficient in its design. So we have to collaborate to find ways in which we can better and efficiently collect waste from where it's actually sitting, all the way from the customer back into areas where it needs to be worked on to create the products. The third pillar is to have a collaborative funding platform where we can invest in common infrastructure. So the community assets that need to be used in order to refine products to its granular, call it value again. So for instance, a shoe, how do we invest in that common infrastructure to grind the shoe back to its raw material so we can actually use it in another product? When you do it in smaller communities, it's inefficient. You're investing in equipment that's worth millions. But if we all collaborate together and actually allocate our resources, we can actually fund these machines in order to work on the product. And then the fourth pillar is a marketplace for the waste resource. So how do organizations, people, find a way to actually make their resource available for people who actually need them? So Barloworld, we had a problem. We had multiple waste streams. We knew how to deal with certain waste streams, but we didn't have a clear-cut solution of how do we deal with other waste streams, like, for instance, the actual shoe and apparels that we had. So we needed to find a partner. We needed to find someone, and it took us a while. The journey took us a while to actually go into the market and find people who could help us with a solution. We couldn't make it better. Technology allows us to do that because we can actually build an online platform for that, where entities can actually just be on the platform, upload their waste material, and the SMMEs can actually gain access and say, well, this is what I need. I can work on this product stream and I can make something out of this. So I spoke about the supply chain network behind it all. So how do we return a product all the way from a customer or from a call it a supply chain, whether it's sitting at manufacturing, at the consolidators, customer services, distribution hubs, doesn't really matter. How do we bring it all into a common infrastructure where there is infrastructure that can work on the product to return it to its granular product, and it can be used by SMMEs to create products that we can donate to beneficiaries, like where Tammy's accessing some of the low resource communities and allocating some of these products, because that's where it's actually needed. And we need to design with that in mind. However, we cannot do this in isolation. And the reason being, working on a solution like this in isolation is just inefficient. And the whole purpose of this, it's a sustainability solution. We're working towards a common goal. So we have to collaborate, especially in these aspects there and the actual supply chain of moving products. So if you've got dead weights, how do we actually leverage that and bring product back, make it easy for the customer to actually bring back any products that they would typically throw away in a bin? So where are we today? So our first, or how we evolving the solution that we put together with Close to Good, is creating the first online platform. And we're in the phase where we're developing our MVP around the platform itself. And this platform, it's an online platform, simple online platform where we load all the products that have been developed through the process. and consumers can actually access the products. Buy a product, you either buying it for your own consumption or you buying the product for a beneficiary out there, where obviously they'd be vetted. And that's the beauty of technology, that you don't have to worry that whoever you're donating the product to is not vetted. That work would be done beforehand. So safe online platform. And we have to create the platform because one of the reasons that the platform is important is in an environment or in a world where choices are limited, you typically compete on location. But today, choices are unlimited. The way you compete is completely different. You compete on attention. You have to create that platform in order to sell the value of why these products are actually important. So it's not a beanbag. There's more to it, and a platform has to exist in isolation that speaks to the products and what the value of why you're buying the product, where it's going, who are the people that actually worked on it. There's a story behind the actual product. The second phase is, which is something that will come in the future beyond obviously the actual online platform where you're selling the products, is to create a platform through collaboration, and this is where industry needs to come together. And creating that platform where, from a waste stream point of view, SMMEs and the waste stream producers can actually meet. How does that happen from a supply side? So waste producers like Barloworld should be able to log onto the platform, upload whatever waste streams they have, and on the demand side, an SMME like Close to Go that understands what to do with it or specialize in a specific product waste can access it and they can use it, and then again, upload it on the initial platform on the online marketplace to actually sell it off and get it to the areas that it's needed. The third phase is the common infrastructure. Again, this is where industry and people need to collaborate. How do we build the common infrastructure? So it costs millions to actually put up a grinding machine to grind a shoe to its granular material. And how do we then collaborate on a platform where we can donate, whether it's your CSI spend or enterprise development spend? This would be typically a good area to actually allocate your resources, and we then have common infrastructure. On the demand side, SMMEs that work on the product can actually book a slot, whether you build it in Soweto or Tembisa or any of those low resource areas. People can actually tap into it, take their waste there, and work on the product. So I think the point that we want to drive is the reality, or the reality of it all is that from a sustainability point of view, we cannot afford to compete. We don't see this particular area from an environmental and social point of view as an area where we want to gain any sort of strategic advantage. It doesn't make sense. The cost of actually competing when it comes to environment is just too expensive. So we should actually collaborate, work together in finding those common solutions. I think what we've done is a small contribution towards a bigger global, call it complex issue that we are dealing with. So we have to collaborate even more. I think this for us was just the beginning and the step of driving us in the right direction. Okay. So I think just in closing, this is, Tolman, and this is Dewald's son. We lost him in 2021, and just to share a story about it. So we're grateful that he was able to open up and share his experience with his son, because it taught us a lot. And as part of this journey, how much in terms of resources it actually took him and the effort to actually stimulate and get his son to develop over the years. And witnessing that as part of his journey, we realized that actually there's a bigger problem here. Unfortunately, in some areas, you may have resources to actually help. In this instance, Dewald is able to actually provide resources to his son. But from a low-resource community, there's children out there that actually don't have access to some of these important toys like Tammy showed. So it became a real problem that we had to stand up and say, well, how do we actually contribute? How do we actually solve and play our part in actually solving that problem? And it actually moved us from being sympathetic, but becoming more empathetic in how we actually approach our work, and that's the type of solutions that we put together. So one of the products that we are currently working on with Close to Good is actually a beanbag that we can produce locally at a much cheaper cost using all of this waste in order to allocate to kids that actually need it. So we can actually get them stimulated and they can develop much better over the years. So having said that, and in closing, I think that last message was all about collaborating and coming together, working together as an industry. So thank you.
Thank you. I got a bit emotional, so I had thoughts in my mind to share until you shared the Anno story. So thanks, Dewald, for sharing your life with us as well. Thanks, Tammy, for the work you do. Thanks, Thato, for the work you guys do at Barloworld. Any questions from the floor?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to know. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody, for your contributions. It makes ordinary day people like us think a little. But the question I'm really wanting to ask is, it's fine and well that we collaborate and put resources towards these kind of initiatives, but in terms of governmental, are we as corporates forced to declare waste? Is there an organization that understands exactly which organizations are creating the waste and what is done with it? Is it regulated? Or is it really just, find something to do with your waste? And if it is landfill, then that's it. Is there any movement towards regulation of waste in this country?
You want to take that?
Yeah.
You want to take that? Yeah. Jesse, maybe you can help me here. I think we are on the go. I think in many other countries we see that there's very strict regulations coming in. In South Africa, I think we're only getting there. To me, it's about what are the values of your company? We have one of two choices. Somebody once said, please don't throw it away because there is no away. And we want companies and organizations to be responsible. We want you to look at waste and say, it is hurting the planet and it can become so much more. We can't wait for those regulations. Why do we want to be regulated before we make a difference? It doesn't make any sense. So we're going to wait for regulations in South Africa in 10 years from now and hurt the planet and not have the impact. That's just my view on it. Yeah. Yes?
All right, thanks. I'm going to take one question here and then I'll come back to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted to ask, because since you put so much emphasis on collaboration, is there any way of incorporating this waste management with our trolley waste pickers, known as the trolley men, who are also usually homeless people? So I'm wondering if, Tammy, your organization can incorporate that, Thato as well, in terms of they help our environment greatly in terms of collecting the waste. So do you see in any way collaborating with them? Because it's a known fact that most of them are from poor backgrounds.
Should I take it?
Yeah. You want to take it?
No, you can take it if you want.
So
I'll also take it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So again, from our perspective, from a Barloworld point of view, the statement around collaboration is very open. It's not specific to organizations or specific SMMEs. I think the intention is, how do we best divert this product from landfill? And if there's any communities or any areas or anyone who provides a specific solution that can solve a problem that we can't, that's what we want. We want more and more people to actually join us, and it's not an us, but join the move to actually do something about this global complex problem. So the simple answer to your question is a yes. We open for collaboration.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, they are getting more formalized. They are working in groups. And I think something that is close to my heart is that we see a lot of those waste speakers are now women. And they carry their children with them. And I was often thinking, how can we create a solution where their children would be traveling safely with them? And to add to Thato, we are open to any collaboration as long as we can manage all of that, and we need you. We can't do this alone.
Sorry, ma'am, you had a question? Okay, then you had it.
So I guess to start off with, it's just wow, thank you very much. The next one is, I think as you scale this up and everything, is never to lose sight of what the initial intention was, and that was also to provide work opportunities for people with disabilities. So as you put in the big machines, let's just make sure that the right people are operating those machines and that you maintain those employment opportunities for people with disabilities, and potentially grow that into your app development and everything else. But yeah, from my side, wow, guys, really, really nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and just to add to that statement, I think people forget the power of people with disabilities. We have people with disabilities working in a distribution center I'm not sure, I can't say their name, but they are outperforming able-bodied people in their sleep. So the first time when we had the meeting with the country manager, I said, please talk to me about the challenges, of these 4 young men in your distribution center. And I was stressed because as an occupational therapist, you want to make sure that they are happy, the customer is happy, their parents are happy. And she said, Tammy, the only problem we really have at the moment is that these guys refuse to take lunch because they really love this job and they want to finish the task of cutting the boxes, flattening the boxes. So when you do employment and when you want to employ people with disabilities, keep in mind that it is easier than it looks. It's really not that difficult.
All right, thanks. One more question this side.
I can also say brilliant, well done, awesome. To get back to the question of, is it regulated? The problem is what they're doing with the regulation currently is they're buying their way out of it. So we all take this wonderful plastic and we split it. What we don't know is that 60% of that cannot be recycled, and it ends up in Africa and it goes into the ocean. Not into landfill, into the ocean. The same with textile waste. And to go green, people are buying acres of land and they write that off against the gases that they emit.
Carbon offsets.
Correct. So the bottom line is, it's us, the layman, because the corporate thinks, and not all corporates, but corporates are buying their way out of it. And we need to take care of what our children will need to survive on. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dries, for your contribution. I've got a question, Tammy. How can we help you as individuals, not as companies?
I think, first of all, to change your perception. I think perception is everything. And I hope that after today, that perception of waste will be a little bit different. I hope that you would lie awake at night if you are landfilling too many of these things. That's the first thing that you can help with, is because we need to create a movement. I think the second thing is, in your individual capacity, whether it's your company capacity, to think about employment of people with disabilities. And there's always, if as a social enterprise, we create our own funding, we create micro enterprises, we are not an organization that's asking for funding. What we're asking is collaboration so that we can get enough funding to do things differently, to shred shoes, to build early childhood development products, to employ a group of mothers that can make this from their homes. So that's how people can help, is to think about how can I inspire other people, how can I empower other people. But you are also welcome to come and sort clothes on our premises, of course.
Yeah.
Last question. Please keep it short.
Thanks, guys. I just wanted to check, is there any kind of body that we could log on to or something and see like-minded charities like yourself where we could see what kind of waste we've got could be used elsewhere in that? Because I think a lot of people are stuck in a position where they don't know what can actually be used elsewhere or what can be recycled into such type items. So, yeah.
That's you. You
Yeah, so-
took 20 minutes about it.
So I think the whole point is to actually create that platform. I think our journey is to move it to the next phase where we're saying, well, the first is have an online where you can actually create a market for the product, but you have to create a secondary market that's actually feeding into it. And the third one is that leg around where does the actual waste actually come from. So we want your waste to be on the platform so that the SMMEs that can work on that product stream can actually use it. But if you look at the 4 pillars of this entire thing, and what we want to do from a technology point of view is make that data available. Because the moment we understand what product waste is actually available across the country or wherever it's coming from, we understand what product it is, we understand where it came from, it's easier to also inform the product design, because once we understand all the layers and how much effort it actually takes, this is valuable information that we can actually give to producers of product, the original product, to say, well, your product is the most difficult to actually handle. When you in product design, think about sustainable material that you can use to actually produce that particular product. But to answer your question more specifically is that our journey now is to actually create that platform where we can have your entity making their product available. And you can also see what SMMEs are available out there that are working on the different product stream, because currently it's all scattered and it's sitting in different areas. And we want to leverage technology to bring it all together.
And if you have any questions, and if you're in a specific area, wherever that is, come to our stand, and then maybe we can start finding those nonprofits or social enterprise or SMME, so that you don't have to wait too long.
Yep.
Okay.